Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With episode 712 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened over the last week across NXT and AEW. When it comes to NXT, obviously, we will be covering the entirety of that NXT Roadblock show Tuesday night. AEW, couple items to wrap up from Collision last week, but the fallout from AEW Revolution on AEW Dynamite Wednesday will be the primary topic of our conversation surrounding that brand. We have a loaded show for you, as we always seem to right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. So before we get to all of that performance-enhancing audio, allow the Silver King to remind you that this show
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Not only do you get every audio episode on that platform, you also get clips, video clips from our old interviews and full video interviews for everything we conduct in 2025 and beyond. Of course, we did an hour-long sit-down conversation with NXT play-by-play man Vic Joseph last week that is up on the channel. You don't want to miss it. We've also uploaded 5 different clips from our Becky Lynch interview over the last couple of weeks. The newest one posted on Thursday. Hit us up on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can also send in questions and comments that we will read on the show, and you get other content as well. Follow us on social media. What are you waiting for? And please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
And I hope you guys do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major TV show shortly after they go off the air, and every week exclusive news analysis posts. You get all of it at buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. As promised, we have a load of performance-enhancing audio ready for your earholes, and we're not wasting any time getting to it. We're going to kick off with NXT. We'll circle around to AEW. Whether there's a second look at AEW Revolution remains to be seen. We'll find out in a couple minutes, but we'll also discuss the entirety of Collision that was not talked about on that AEW Revolution instant analysis, and of course the entirety of Dynamite, which did not happen by the time Revolution concluded. And on that note, if you did not hear already, that Revolution instant analysis podcast is waiting in our feed for your earholes. Make sure you don't miss that before you hear the AEW portion. As always, there are timestamps in the episode description. So if you're only here for NXT or AEW, you can jump around. As always, though, I hope you listen to this entire show. As I just mentioned, we're going to kick off with the 2025 edition of NXT Roadblock, a television special aired live on the CW in the United States, obviously Netflix internationally. And the headline, I guess, coming out of Roadblock is that this was one of the best episodes of wrestling television from an in-ring standpoint that I can remember. And I've been watching this shit for 3 decades. Considering this is WWE's 3rd brand, it's half developmental brand, whatever you want to consider it in 2025, it's really saying something. I maintain, as I do frequently here on the show, that NXT is the best wrestling show on television in terms of getting consistent value out of your 2 hours of time. If you plunk down 2 hours to watch this product, you're going to be entertained, you're going to see quality wrestling, and you're never going to leave it having thought, well, that was a waste. Like you might with a 3-hour Raw, 3-hour SmackDown, a 2-hour Dynamite, more frequently a 2-hour Collision. But what was interesting about Tuesday night is how particularly special that episode came across. They went all out. The New York crowd in the theater at Madison Square Garden was immense. It felt like watching an NXT takeover on free television, which is absolutely wild when you consider how far removed this brand has been from shows, the caliber of takeovers in the past. That's not to say some of their premium live events have not delivered. They absolutely have. They've had great television specials as well. But this came across like one of those takeovers where match after match, you get banger after banger, and you're left at the end wondering, like, does it actually get better than this? So, spoiler alert, I loved NXT Roadblock on Tuesday night. Let's go match by match, discuss the entire show. The main event, appropriately, the NXT Women's Champion Julia defending her title against Stephanie Vaquer, the NXT North American Champion, whose title was also on the line. Yes, champion versus champion, title versus title. And we got to give a shout out, by the way, to Mike Rome for an incredible ring announce ahead of this match. He mentioned, of course, both of those monikers. He called both of them out. There were great graphics for Julia and Vaquer. Just the whole presentation of this felt special. Now, while this was the main event, it only started with 13 minutes left in the show. And that kind of lent credence to the idea that Julia is injured and couldn't wrestle that long. Because if you're going to call this the biggest match in NXT history, you can't necessarily be doing that and then starting it with 13 minutes left in a television program, right? Anyway, let's talk about the match. Bunch of counter sequences early. Vaquer hit powerful springboard crossbody deep into the ramp. Julia did a draping neckbreaker off the apron and Stephanie's own thigh driller to her during commercial break. Vaquer landed Eat Defeat, a Meteora, and then her thigh driller, leading to fans literally chanting, Booker T, knowing what he was doing on commentary, which was an absolutely hysterical chant and perfectly timed by the crowd. I literally laughed out loud hearing that on my couch. Julia hit a double underhook top rope superplex and an arm trap spinning sit-down power slam. Stephanie did a dragon screw out of the corner and SVB for a false finish. Julia caught spiral tap perfectly into a triangle, moved that into Rings of Saturn. It was legitimately one of the best and most fluid wrestling counters I've ever seen. Male, female, developmental, Stardom, New Japan, doesn't matter. One of the best counters I've ever seen. Then she landed Arrivederci, but Vaquer avoided the Northern Lights bomb, hit a second SVB, and then just for good measure, she hit a third for the clean 1-2-3 to become the NXT Women's Champion in 12 minutes. Huge celebration, tons of confetti raining down as Stephanie became the first woman since Becky Lynch to hold two titles, singles titles, simultaneously in WWE. You'll hear a lot of positive adjectives on this show, and they're going to get repetitive, but this was an exceptional match and main event between these two women, especially with Julia presumably working hurt, though we don't know exactly what's going on with her. This completely erased the memory of their first awful match in Stardom. And as I said last week on the preview, I bet that is completely due to their newfound familiarity and their friendship. There will be a lot of spots discussed from Roadblock. My favorite one on the entire show was Julia catching Vaquer clean on the spiral tap for the immediate triangle counter. It was literally perfect. 10 out of 10 level of difficulty. If this was given the runtime a match this caliber deserved, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, it probably would have entered 5-star territory. As it was, they got about 17 minutes of action into 13 minutes of a match. If Julia is injured, then it being short makes sense. If she's not, let's say she has visa issues or a family situation, then I don't understand the short runtime unless something else on Roadblock went long and they just got screwed. And there was nothing in this match in terms of her work that told me she's hurt. But at the same time, athletes of all kinds, they'll take injections, they'll have numbing agents. Perhaps something is bothering her that she was able to grit through. She just didn't favor anything in the match. She took a ton of big moves, all on different body parts throughout, and nothing looked to be hurt. But again, you just can't make those types of assumptions. Despite all of that, the short runtime and possibly her working hurt, this was an epic match that left you wanting more, and we absolutely need a PLE main event between these two. I'd even go with an Iron Woman match, 30 minutes, just let them go crazy. My only real criticism is the SVB finisher. Vaquer needs something else. It's a slow developing backbreaker, and she can't use the spiral tap in every match. So this was 4.25 stars and an A. That's where I'm going with my grade. It's almost a ceiling grade for a 13-minute match. I mean, there have been 5-star matches that are 15 minutes or less. It has happened. But given all the circumstances, I just couldn't get really anywhere above an A. And I feel like 4.25 is pretty fair given the work they put in and the time they were allotted. But like I said, if this had gone 25 minutes and they just stretched this out and did exactly what they could have done with double the time, I mean, it would have been an A+ match, almost certainly entering that territory. So now we have Steffi 2 belts, right? There's going to be this huge lingering question about what's going to happen next. The simplest move is to pull a Keith Lee, relinquish the North American title, hold qualifying matches for a 5-way ladder match at Stand and Deliver, crown a new champion. The titles are not going to be unified, so there's really no concern about that. But it is possible that Vaquer just carries both titles through Stand and Deliver. And that brings me to a DM I got after the show. Sean McDermott, not the Bills coach, at I'm Bored Brother, wrote in, would you rather see Stephanie Vaquer relinquish the NA title like Keith Lee or be a double champ? He suggested a double title match at Stand and Deliver where the first fall is for the North American title, the second fall is for the NXT title. He said you could even make it a triple threat. So the only way I would be okay with a 2 falls match is if it was a triple threat or a 4-way. You need to have Vaquer lose the North American title without being pinned. That's a unique way to do it. But what happens as a consequence is there's one fewer women's title match on the card. Now, if she relinquishes the title, they could do the aforementioned ladder match. Or what they could do is the 2-fall title match, let's say with 4 women, and then separately hold a 5-person ladder match for a number 1 contendership, either for the North American title or for the NXT Women's Championship. Another way to do it is to have Stephanie successfully defend the North American title a couple times in the ensuing weeks, then relinquish it closer to the show after maybe having a conversation with Shawn Michaels, where it comes at his request and it's not her decision. Relinquishing the title failed with Keith Lee because he did it of his own volition, and then he lost the main title weeks later to Karrion Kross because he got called up to the main roster. I doubt they're going to make the same mistake again with Stephanie, but even if Vaquer does relinquish, I imagine she will be women's champion all the way up until Julia gets back, if not longer than that. So I don't necessarily have concerns about the way they're going to book it, but I am absolutely curious about how this is going to transpire. Now let's actually go to the match that started the show. The TNA Tag Team Championships were on the line. The Hardy Boys defending against Fraxium. This opened the show. Crowd was chanting TNA and NXT back and forth. The NXT title, again, was not on the line here. All 4 guys wore black, which would have been annoying if the Hardys didn't wear shirts to differentiate. Fraxium hit consecutive tope suicidas plus a tope cannonball. They also did an Escalera moonsault, all in succession, 1, 2, 3, 4, heading into the first break. Matt caught Nathan Frazier on a tope suicida for a side effect ringside. Axiom then popped up from a cutter into a neck breaker. He avoided Twist of Fate, pushing Matt into Jeff on the ropes, hitting a Spanish fly plus a perfect Phoenix splash from Frazier for a broken fall. Jeff took Fraxium out with Whisper in the Wind before Frazier a Twist of Fate for a false finish. Jeff then threw Frazier in the way of Axiom flying off the ropes for their high-low finisher. Matt eliminated Axiom with Twist of Fate before Jeff landed Swanton Bomb on Frazier for the 1, 2, 3 as the Hardys retained the titles. Now look, we all had a feeling that this was coming, and just like I said last week, it's an immensely questionable booking decision. Yes, the Hardys are the Hardys, but Fraxium, they've been champions for 316 of the last 334 days, nearly a calendar year. And their first loss in nearly 7 months comes without the titles on the line against a team from another company. Something else I did not like was NXT quickly cutting away from this when it was over to a backstage segment. The Hardys should have at least put Fraxium over in the middle of the ring with a handshake, a bow of respect, vice versa. Something like that. We didn't get to see any of it. Now, there were some social media things of them commiserating backstage, and the Hardys cut a promo as well, but the TV audience didn't get to see that. And if you're going to have legends beat the literal best tag team in the world right now, they should at least be putting them over with respect after the match. Taking another perspective, fans always complain when we have these brand versus brand matches and they end with schmaz finishes or without definitive winners. So this flew in direct contrast to that as the Hardys won, and they did so in squeaky clean fashion. The TNA title being on the line is why we expected that to be the case. But now that the Hardys won, perhaps they will want the NXT straps and will actually get 50-50 booking, with Fraxium getting a win back when their championships are on the line at a later date. That would certainly would make a lot of sense to this finish if Fraxium gets to beat the Hardys. And what you could also do is then run a rubber match, title versus title, at Stand and Deliver. I don't know that they will do that. I'm just saying they could. Now, it seemed like Friendly Fire may have been rekindling Fraxium's internal issues here. Let's hope that's not the case. That storyline was tired and they've solidified as a team recently. I don't want to go back to that. As I said, they're the best tag team in the world right now. They should not be slowing down at all. Despite my concerns, this was still a fantastic match. The Hardys seriously leveled up just in their advanced years, going up against a young, fast, and explosive team. You could tell this match was important to them, the way they wrestled it, just like Julia and Stephanie, 4.25 stars and an A. Next up, the NXT Championship on the line, Oba Femi defending against Moose, and I got to scroll here on my soundboard and get this shit ready. Femi came across The Undertaker on his way to the ring. Taker said he's impressed with Oba, and he stressed the importance of this match, saying he needs to defend his yard. Then they dapped up. This was the mid-show feature, and again, the TNA X Division title was not on the line in this case.
Oh, we got two big meaty men bumping me tonight. No bread, no water, just me.
Femi hit an apron Uranagi and his toss slam plus fall from grace early-ish. Moose rolled outside. Moose then reversed Femi into the steel steps with such force the steps actually shifted a full foot off the ring post, which was crazy. Femi caught Moose's Escalera move with a European uppercut and basically hit a fireman's carry style jackhammer. He should use that more frequently. It was sick. Fans were hot all match, but for some reason, they did the "Let's go Cena, Cena sucks" chants, randomly in the middle of this absolute banger. Moose hit a top rope superplex. Oba countered the follow-through into a regular suplex. Femi turned him inside out with a lariat. Moose reversed a powerbomb. Oba insanely press slammed Moose over the top rope to the floor. So Moose then ran him into the ring post and exploded the announce table with a Uranagi. Then he hit a spear for a false finish, with Oba catching Moose running, hitting fall from grace, and retaining his NXT title. Holy shit.
Big meaty man slapping meat. That's what I want.
There's a lot of beef out here.
There was a lot of beef out there. This was everything that you could want and more. Top contender for big meaty moment of the year. Two behemoths going toe-to-toe exceeded my wildest expectations in terms of how much Moose took from Femi, the cleanliness of Oba's victory, the way Moose put him over. Oba needed to go over strong, especially after Taker dapped him up backstage, and that's what Moose did for him. I feel kind of crazy going this high for a TV match, but again, I'm at 4.25 stars and an A. And besides that, 5 slabs of beef.
Reinforce the ring post. The beef's going to be flying tonight, gentlemen.
Honestly, I might even be a quarter star short here. High protein, no carbs whatsoever. Oba Femi and Moose. Moving to Jordan Grace against Roxanne Perez. Really nice work early in this. Grace countered into a rear naked choke that Perez broke by concentrating on a knee that she was working. Jordan tried to hop on the ropes and sold the knee by slipping, which I've never seen done so emphatically as she did. Roxanne wrapped it around the ring post internally and stretched it. Grace came back with a great tombstone suplex and a package powerbomb. Perez stopped the muscle buster, took out the knee again before hitting a basement hurricanrana, a frog splash to the middle of the ring, and a crossface with a fishhook. Jordan avoided Pop Rocks. She had a rolling Death Valley driver and a Juggernaut driver for the squeaky clean statement win over Roxy. You pull the commercial away from this, add a few minutes, you might be talking about an A match. Perez stepped up her game even further here. The fluidity between the two of them was crazy immense. A bit surprised Jordan won while also selling an injury because that made her win even more impactful. But it did come after Roxy dominated the match offensively. Maybe the idea was to put over the finisher. It now does seem like Roxy's going to move up to the main roster after WrestleMania, because if you're having her lose matches in ways like this, you're not necessarily keeping her on the brand. If that's the case, putting over the likes of Jordan on her way out of the territory, it does make complete sense. They're now 1-1, so a rubber match is certainly possible. I'm right borderline here. 89, 90, 3.75 stars, B+, 4 stars, A-. It's right there. I just feel like you take that commercial away, it's an easy A-. But this was a fantastic match. It was the quote-unquote worst match on the show, and yet it was an A-, B+. I mean, that speaks to the quality of NXT Roadblock. Fallon Henley backstage demanded a North American Championship match, screaming in Ava's face. Ricky Saints interrupted, so JC Jane said Ridge Holland was right, and he didn't belong there. Saints didn't want that talk to continue, so we got a match made with Holland next week. Ethan Page then came in, saying NXT doesn't like outsiders like Saints, and thankfully Vic Joseph immediately pointed out how hypocritical that was. But it was a nice building block segment. That brought us into Javon Evans versus Ethan Page in a New York City street fight. Both guys actually wore regular clothes, but it was an odd look that they both wore knee pads over their jeans. You got to wear those underneath the jeans, guys. Page took a bouncy hurricanrana and a blue thunderbomb both into chairs. Evans tried a pile driver while standing on 2 chairs, but Page escaped. He did an arm drag off the top rope into the chairs, and then a pull string power slam through a prop table. Ethan caught Javon flying with a straight punch to the jaw, adding Ego's edge for a false finish. Evans went ham coming back, hit a springboard kick into a chair right into Page's face. Then he took Page off the apron tope style with a cutter through a table. Javon then added a massive tope con hero. Both of them flew over the announce table. He added a springboard tornado splash for a false finish. Evans then wrapped a chair around Page's neck, tried to stomp him, but Ethan threw it to his face. Page tried twisted grin into the chair, but Evans countered into a cutter, put the chair back around his neck, and then hit a springboard cutter, crushing Page's jaw into the chair and earning the 1-2-3. Another outstanding match. It was a bit strange early. They were delivering some really strong shots, and the crowd was not really reacting as expected. But once this match came back from commercial, every single person in that arena was all in. This was a blood feud. It probably went a bit longer than necessary, with Page kicking out of one too many moves. But you know what? He was immense throughout. Page's selling was top tier, and he took an absolute beating from Evans. It was probably Javon's best match in WWE thus far. The spots just stacked one after another into this crescendo at the end. Javon, he may wind up being an all-time babyface, just given his level of likability, the storytelling of this match, the way he is able to tell stories individually in the ring, and having this be a long-term feud immensely helped him, and really both of them coming out of this. I know it sounds repetitive. 4.25 stars and an A. This was a fantastic freaking match. Now, the lights went out as Evans was celebrating with the new faction appearing throughout the crowd under spotlights. They rushed to the ring. They murked Javon. One guy ran at him and missed him, like just threw himself into the corner, which was really strange. But then Javon took the 4-man toss powerbomb. The heels stood tall with their masks still on. The presentation of this for me continues to work. I know people are dogging it, okay? When they initially debuted, the first time they came out, it was shit. The second time on that show, and then everything they've done since, for me, it is working. But as I said on this show like a couple weeks ago, at this point, we need more definitive information about this stable. What are their motivations? What's their name? Who are they? Why are they doing this? Like, it has to happen next week. We can't be waiting any longer for this shit to transpire. Like, they got to have a statement about their intentions, or else we're going to stop giving a shit about them. It's been a month now. Like, what are we doing here? So that's my frustration with it, but I think the presentation is fine, and any comparisons to this Shield or Retribution, they really are just ridiculous. Jada Parker and Mickie James commiserated backstage, with Mickie agreeing that Jada should create her own opportunities. James said her line, "Miss Parker don't play," and she appreciated how Parker is so unapologetic. The tease was Jada leveling up over the next couple of weeks to challenge at Stand and Deliver. And of course, this was a cool segment having them talk to each other. Trick Williams said F that to the idea that NXT Underground is Eddie Thorpe's match. This was during a training montage promo that happened in New York City. He promised to knock his ass out cold. This version of Trick, it's way better than any other we've gotten to this point. He still needs to level up his ring work, though, and get rid of Trick Shot just to fully realize this adjusted character. Thorpe later in the crowd put himself over as the king of the underground, saying he knows Williams doesn't like getting hit. The crowd was surprisingly rabid, booing him, and then Trick ran down some stairs for an extended attack into the ring with Williams standing tall. Hot segment. It actually had some like Sunday Night Heat, Shotgun Saturday Night vibes, just given the way the crowd reacted. So that kind of popped me. Stacks backstage was furious that Tony D'Angelo lost the North American Championship. He blamed himself for it happening. D'Angelo told him emotion is a sign of weakness. He started putting a plan in place, but Stacks informed they already set a 6-person tag team match next week to get some respect back on the family's name. I'm enjoying the back and forth between them. I just hope it's not leading to a split. It should just be a new level of team development. There was also another vignette for Sean Spears' faction, which is being called The Culling. It was meant to be deliberate and intense, but the youngsters came across almost as they were just like reading lines. Spears was proud to have taken gold last week, but he wanted the juniors to kind of take the heart of D'Angelo family for The Culling next week. It's a solid name for a stable. I was more into them last week than this week, but they're just getting started. This promo, though, it was pretty damn generic. And lastly, there was a really fun social media post by Zarya. She had taken Sol Ruca to what had to be the worst break room that I've ever seen, where they just broke like a bunch of bottles and then did axe throwing afterward. I thought break rooms were supposed to be like old computers and TVs and furniture and like shit you could really destroy. But this was another silly team building vignette, but in a good way. So that wraps up NXT. Look, you got 4 A matches and a B+, A- on a single television show. It's one of the best in-ring wrestling TV episodes I've ever seen. Straight up entertaining 2 hours, start to finish. Huge main event with Stephanie Vaquer being as over as she ever has been before. I can't laud any more praise on Roadblock without it sounding like I'm a shill for NXT. You guys know it's my preferred brand, and it has been for a while, just the way that they are operating. But this really was a great show, and if you're someone who your NXT consumption is listening to me break it down on this episode, literally just go on the CW app or Netflix and just watch this entire episode. You'll understand why I put it over the way I did. Now, before we get to AEW, quick notes from WWE Evolve this week. Stevie Turner was Ava's liaison for the show, so Ava didn't even show up. She announced Riley Osborne and Oro Mensah were both Evolve talent and would fight in the main event. Mensah won that match, which was quite well wrestled. Then later we learned Javier Bernal is also on the brand. He's going to fight Luca Crucifino soon. They also got a promo segment together. Gallus appeared at the end of the show. We knew they would be on Evolve, but it remains an interesting move. Wendy Chu also wrestled, and Brynlee Reese has a match next week. I'm good with all of these moves, but Mensah and Wendy, I don't really know about them. It seems like they were both beyond Evolve at this point. I suppose with Wendy, if it's keeping her employed, then that's ultimately a positive. I just want more for her. Gallus, they're clearly beyond Evolve, but I just don't see them working on the main roster, so it does make a lot of sense for them to be here. From the non-WWE talent, Kylie Ray made her debut and lost. Perhaps that's going to be her role, like a veteran who puts young talent over, but it was a significant upset on the show and both in reality, given expectations for her signing. So we'll just have to see how that develops. And that's it. That's all I have. Like I said, Evolve is only going to be a couple minutes per week if we discuss it at all on this episode. I'm not going result by result from the show. Most of the matches don't matter at all, but I will certainly point out anything that over-delivers, is immensely notable, or is particularly bad on a week-to-week basis. Now, moving over to AEW in terms of a second look at Revolution. I didn't watch every single match again. I watched a number of the matches again. And there's actually only 2 that I had adjustments on. The AEW Championship, Jon Moxley and Adam Copeland. I had it at 3 stars, B-. I did watch it again. I'm down to 2.75 stars and a C+. Minor adjustment, but it just wasn't a B match. It wasn't in that level. And also Mercedes Moné against Momo Watanabe. Had it at 4 stars, A-, down to 3.75 stars, B+. Again, it just didn't kind of level up to where I thought it was when I watched it live. Also, having seen many of the other segments and moments from the show, I needed to create a little greater separation between Mercedes and Momo and Toni Storm and Mariah May, which of course was an A match. But I didn't really have that much extra to take away from Revolution. I thought our instant analysis was spot on in terms of breaking down the matches and the storylines moving forward. And I'm proud of that. You know, I like when we do second looks, but at the same time when we don't have to, and I feel like we actually nailed it at first blush, that's almost even better. So let's go ahead and move on to AEW television. Now, we did cover some of Collision during the Revolution instant analysis. In terms of the storyline relevance of matches, I got to tell you, pretty disappointing this week. 4 out of 13 were relevant, and that's less than a third. And that's for a go-home show to a pay-per-view and the first show coming out of said pay-per-view. 2 of those 4 relevant matches were tournament bouts. I mean, that's extremely poor. And then you look at Dynamite on its own Wednesday. It was easily the worst in a month. A terrible follow-up from Revolution. Multiple major stars completely missing from being live at the show. AEW relies far too much on promos after Revolution to then air on Dynamite as if that counts as the talent being there live. There was also very little storyline development for those that did show up. 2 of them literally just appeared and cut promos. This is a constant AEW problem where they have big stars, especially in big moments at a pay-per-view, that don't show up on television the following Wednesday. They don't have house shows or live events. These major talents are not working for other promotions. Most of the ones I'm talking about live in the United States. The one who doesn't, Will Ospreay, was actually on television. So what's the excuse for all these other talents not being on TV a few days after a pay-per-view? I was actually shocked that MJF was there because he's the one who's almost always absent the Wednesday after a pay-per-view. Dynamite had been rolling hot the last 3 weeks. This was a significant turn in the other direction. I think I just combined the word 3 and 2. It's been rolling hot the last 3 weeks, maybe even a full month. But again, this was a step in the other direction, disappointing at that. So let's go ahead and discuss everything that happened on Dynamite and wrap up some of what happened on Collision. Kenny Omega opened Dynamite. He was called the first AEW Grand Slam champion, which is completely appropriate. I guess there's multiple avenues to achieving that honor now that you think about it, though. He thanked a bunch of people, including Konosuke Takeshita, for pushing him to be the best again. Then he announced a Dynasty Eliminator tournament, saying he was excited to face the best. It was unfortunately a total nothing promo, and I'd have far preferred AEW to actually generate like an exciting storyline for him, as opposed to just creating another Contender Series so Omega can, be off TV doing nothing, waiting for someone to face? This guy needs to be on television weekly, and he should be cutting promos and feuding with someone into a major match. And by the way, some of the people getting chances in this tournament include Hechicero, the Beast Mortos, and Mark Davis, guys who never win singles matches on AEW TV. So why are they in it? Why do they deserve the opportunity? And then you have all those 3 matches where you know what the outcome is going to be. So they're boring matches because you just know who's going to move on already before the matches even start. Totally lackluster. On Dynamite, Takeshita answered Max Caster's open challenge, basically squashed him with a single forearm to the face, knocking him out cold. Takeshita stopped the cover, though. He added Raging Fire just for good measure. Caster continues to do a real decent job with this. I'm just not sure I understand the point of it. Like, where does it go? Especially with Anthony Bowens not on screen anywhere. He should be racking up wins, taking advantage of his Pride of AEW gimmick. He's disappeared. Is he hurt? Does he answer these open challenges at some point and win? And if so, then what does that mean for him and what does that mean for Caster? I'm just really confused at where this is going. Regarding the Dynasty Eliminator, the first match, Speedball Mike Bailey debuted, and he got a win over the Beast Mortos. There was a really cool avalanche press slam by Mortos. Bailey completely no-sold a huge backbreaker, but hit a really cool moonsault-style cannonball before landing a crescent kick for the win. Nice debut match from an in-ring standpoint. I'm really not into this person's look or the karate gimmick or really any of that. They're going to need to win me over. And at this juncture, just like, I know it's only one match, but I've seen some stuff previously in TNA. I saw the match with Will Ospreay. It was incredible. Like an insane match that they had, but that's the in-ring. I'm finding an issue caring about them, and we'll just have to see, the way it goes. I'm not going to cast any dispersions right now. I just really wasn't impressed from the debut. On Dynamite, Orange Cassidy beat Hechicero in the second qualifier with a mousetrap. Hechicero dominated most of the match. Orange won from underneath. This was the main event of the first show after a pay-per-view. Orange and Hechicero. Orange, who competed in the pre-show, and Hechicero, who's not even an AEW wrestler. The main event of the first Dynamite after a highly acclaimed Revolution. Immensely disappointing booking. Also on Dynamite, Ricochet backstage said his quest for gold didn't end after being screwed by Swerve Strickland. He offered Katsuyori Shibata the option to just forfeit the match. It was a way better promo than we've gotten from him in the last few weeks. Nice, composed, made sense. I actually like that he's wearing hats. You don't see the baldness as much. On Dynamite, there was an announcement that Adam Copeland is getting a rematch with Jon Moxley for the AEW Championship in a street fight next week. Why? He got his match and lost. I know he didn't get pinned. He had his match and lost. And you're running back this 2 weeks later. The crowd literally groaned when the graphic was put on screen. And now you're telling people who spent $50 for a pay-per-view to get that main event, oh, if you didn't do it, no problem. We're going to give it to you again on TV for free. This was something Vince McMahon did all the time that people hated in WWE. Mox later in a tape promo said he underestimated and now respected Copeland, though he should have put him away before Christian Cage even came close to interfering. Mox promised not to overlook him again while capitalizing in a match without rules. Given this is going to be 2 weeks removed from Revolution, I presume the rest of the Death Riders will be healthy and they'll be able to aid Mox in retaining the title. Maybe Jay White comes in, screws Copeland again. Accidental on purpose, doesn't really matter. You have them feud coming out of it. To me, that would be the right booking. On Dynamite, Swerve, after Revolution, announced his challenge would be at Dynasty, marking 1 year from when he became the first black AEW champion. Cope confronted him, saying they might be the ones fighting. And they dapped up. The new number one contender, who ended the pay-per-view on top, was not in attendance at the next television show. Cope, by the way, said nothing about Christian screwing him over by cashing in. Christian was actually live and demanded the contract be returned to him due to referee incompetence. He said he told the referee when he signed it that he was doing so for a one-on-one match against Copeland, but the referee made it a triple threat. Nick Wayne actually cut him off, saying he was making excuses and lying because he didn't stick to the original plan. And then he said he owed them an apology. Christian shoved him, so Shayna Wayne, his mom, got between them briefly, so Nick needs his mommy to stand up for him. Did not make him look good. Christian then went nose-to-nose with Nick like they were going to kiss, backing him up against the wall, reminding him that he's more accomplished than Nick and his father combined. Cage guaranteed he would become the champion and told Wayne to shut his mouth and keep riding his coattails, and then he literally gave him an Eskimo kiss. So let's get this straight. Of the 4 men featured in the main event segment of the pay-per-view, only Christian showed up live on Dynamite, and by the way, he didn't even show up in front of the crowd. Now, to be fair, the segment with Nick was actually somewhat compelling because Wayne stood up for himself. He called Cage on his bullshit. But that is booking malpractice, having this be the only real angle involving these guys after Revolution, especially when you're making another title match for next week. Besides that, Nick made a great point. Christian's contention that he was cashing in for a one-on-one title match against the challenger was completely nonsensical. I mean, it literally was ridiculous, even for a heel to say that. On Dynamite, there was a great video package recapping the Toni Storm and Mariah May feud. It was even better than the one that actually preceded their match, and it was more proof that this should have main evented Revolution. It was a colossal joke that did not go on last. Unlike everyone else, Storm actually appeared live afterward, saying this tramp is still the champ. She did a thing about animals so she could say, "I'm no pussy," before suggesting an orgy of challengers come at her. You'll remember the last couple of weeks I told you I was all the way back in with Toni. This promo had me back out again. I just could not have cared less as it went longer and longer, one innuendo after another innuendo. Are they fun and great wordplay? Absolutely. Does it mean anything? No, it doesn't. Megan Bayne then blindsided Storm after she finished with one strike. Barely got a reaction from the crowd. That's it, one strike. I'll remind you, Bayne has wrestled 3 total singles matches. Her one notable win over Chris Statlander came through cheating. On Dynamite, Willow Nightingale beat Penelope Ford shockingly fast. All she did was hit a pounce, not even her Dr. Bomb finisher. Ford attacked after the bell because AEW delivered perhaps the worst chair shot I have ever seen.
Market 0!
Chris Statlander saved, still trying to make good with her ex-friend, and then Bayne leveled both of them despite not being ringside previously. She hit Stat with another F5. Again, basically zero reaction from the crowd. Ford is now 1-7 since returning to television. Her lone win is over Robin Renegade in her first match back. On Dynamite, Will Ospreay came out for an interview where he sold his injuries, put over Kyle Fletcher for a future world champion. Ospreay said he's in trouble with his wife because he lied when he promised not to do anything stupid off the top of the cage. I saw people criticizing this as a waste of time. I personally found the story charming. Ospreay said he's now focused on the AEW title. He looked at the Y'all In sign, saying his objective is to be in the main event, and he would achieve that by competing in the Owen Hart Cup. He also sent Mox a warning that an assassin would be coming for the throne. Good promo from Will. What I wonder is if he's still not going to give a shit about the Death Riders for 4 more months, like the rest of the top baby faces in AEW. Maybe we're waiting for Mox Ospreay instead of Darby Allin, but yeah, I'm not necessarily thrilled about the potential of 4 more months of this if that's what ends up transpiring. And I also think it's odd that this guy is happy to wait 4 months for a title match when he just won a signature match on AEW's pay-per-view. Yeah, Swerve is the number 1 contender. That's happening, I believe, next month. You should want to be the next contender after that, like in May or June. Why are you happy waiting until mid-July? That just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. On Dynamite, Jay White backstage congratulated Ospreay through the camera on his win at Revolution. He said the only way Will can achieve his goal in AEW is if the company continues keeping them apart from one another. White then stated that he failed at helping Copeland, but certainly did not do that on purpose, and he refused to let anyone step in front of him as number 1 contender. It was kind of an odd promo. He talking about Mox, Swerve, Ospreay, Copeland. It just really felt unfocused. On Dynamite, Hurt Syndicate after Revolution were looking for their next ass-kicking. MVP said that they're the baddest and deserve to play hard after working hard. Bobby Lashley said his second total line in AEW, suggesting that they go to Gold's Gym, and MVP scolded him for trying to work out still. So later on Dynamite, MJF, after Revolution, called himself a fraud while looking in the mirror, then he broke it. Luckily, he was also live on TV. He insulted fans, saying he's smarter than Hangman Page. MVP randomly interrupted, hugging him tight, sharing a story about MJF chauffeuring him at age 18 to a wrestling show, but while doing that, asking a bunch of questions about the business. MVP said he's proud of Max for living up to all his promises and guarantees, though he's lost his spark and no one in the locker room fears him any longer, which is directly in contrast to the way they see Hurt Syndicate. Then he offered his card, suggesting they talk business, but MJF declined, saying he respects MVP, but he doesn't need help or advice given his record world title reign. MVP pointed out that was in the past for MJF, gave him the card anyway, which was kind of funny from the standpoint that they know each other, they clearly have each other's number, but MVP needed to give him a tiny piece of paper that didn't even have contact information on it. It was an interesting segment from the standpoint of it being completely unexpected. It's always funny to me, though, how MJF has history with like all of these legends, despite never wrestling them on the independents or anything. Now, what this sets up, and I only make this comparison given the singles characters, not the groups, is potentially MJF as a Temu version of The Rock, joining a faction similar to the Nation of Domination, just given their literal dominance of their competition. Another option is to only tease that and instead use MJF as a catalyst to turn Hurt Syndicate babyface, given they've already been trending in that direction. That would require MJF to get a tag team partner. Either way, I am interested in seeing how this plays out, which was a rarity on this episode of Dynamite. MJF later purposely bumped into Hangman Page, who said he didn't believe Max was actually prepared to light him on fire, nor that he didn't care about what the fans think of him. MJF called it a fluke victory, saying he'd go on to become a multiple-time champion, while Page will again fail, and he will think that he reached the top of the mountain, only to come crashing down. MJF said Hangman's biggest insecurity is he doesn't believe he deserves the fans' love, and he's right because he will never make them proud. This was the only true substantial follow-up from Revolution, and I greatly appreciated them actually executing this segment. It was a great promo from MJF as well. On Dynamite, Mercedes Moné backstage sold a throat injury. Billy Starks joined at Monet's request, cutting a promo about how wrestling is important to her, and she wants to become a champion. Mercedes said she's out of her league, but she gave her a title match anyway. She, by the way, Mercedes, is just spamming her catchphrases in these promos. Starks will be getting a TBS title match because she asked for one, despite having never won a singles match in AEW. It's straight up dumb. Her promo is rough as hell, but she's only 20. I'm not holding that against her. I presume the idea is to build toward Mercedes and Athena, but yeah, this was weak as hell. On Collision, the Ops beat 3 jobbers in 2 minutes. Hook got a black towel. This was the opening segment of a pay-per-view go-home show. On Dynamite, the Ops beat 3 more jobbers. This is a great way to establish a trio. Have them beat nobodies week after week. Hook's nickname was longer than the time of this match, and it, again, was the show opener after Omega, which was completely ridiculous. On Collision, Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly beat the Infantry in 9 minutes. This was just a match. Later backstage, Cash Wheeler apologized to Undisputed Knot Kingdom for not shaking their hands. Dax Harwood refused, saying they're the best and should have won. The decision was a rematch next week, and Adam Cole also told Daniel Garcia he wanted a rematch as well. Fine follow-up from last week, but man, I just do not care one iota, and I legitimately believe the only promo in Dax's arsenal is about them being the best tag team in the world. On Collision, TNT title on the line, Garcia retained over Lee Moriarty in 15 minutes. Moriarty, of course, did nothing to deserve the title match, especially given he lost a three-way for it about 5 weeks ago. In fact, get this. This dude has not won a singles match on AEW TV since a September 2022 episode of Rampage. That's 897 days as of this podcast taping. 900 days, no AEW TV singles win, yet he gets a main event title match. This is precisely the problem with Tony Khan's booking.
Are you fucking kidding me?
And no, it doesn't matter that we've had a one-sided start and stop feud with Shane Taylor Promotions. At least Garcia won with a pile driver and a regular cover for a change. Undisputed ensured there would not be a post-match attack, and this all led to an 8-man on Revolution, where Garcia blind tagged Cole to win the match, kind of celebrated in his face. So the expectation is we get a rematch for the title. On Collision, Harley Cameron beat a jobber in 2 minutes with her finishing move. It looked far more awkward than the first time she did it. Like, it could have easily injured someone. On Collision, Hologram beat Dralistico in less than 14 minutes. There was an extended, simply ridiculous gymnastic sequence. And no, I don't care that they're luchadors. It was a joke. Mortos attacked after the bell with Commander saving. Dralistico then murked Alex Abrahantes, allowing Mortos to get the upper hand. The heels stood tall. Roosh was nowhere to be seen, and he went unmentioned in the segment. On Dynamite, Hologram and Hobbs beat Dralistico and Brian Cage. Harley was out with the faces despite having no connection other than calling herself Harley Graham 2 times. Mortos was also ringside. Cage did a superplex on Hobbs. Dralistico then completely missed an elbow drop, which I have never seen someone just straight up miss a move they were supposed to hit. Hologram then did a springboard moonsault outside off Hobbs' shoulder. Hobbs got the win with a catch spinebuster. I think Hobbs was pretty pissed at Dralistico in this match. He missed a bunch of moves. Lance Archer and Mark Davis then came out. So Archer was available this whole time, didn't team with his partner. I don't know. I just felt like I was taking crazy pills this entire segment. On Dynamite, Chris Jericho held Gravity's mask in his hand like he was Hamlet holding Yorick's skull. He cut a promo on Bandito saying he embarrassed him in front of his family. It was actually one of Jericho's best promos in the last 18 months. I just could not really muster a care about it. So that was AEW Dynamite and the remnants of Collision from this week. Just immensely disappointing. As we have said on this show for the last few weeks, and some of you have been surprised that we've taken such a positive turn toward AEW of late, but the product had been so much better from a booking and a storytelling perspective. And going into Revolution, it was hot. Coming out of Revolution, it was hot. But man, I just thought Dynamite, I don't want to call it a failure necessarily, but it failed to deliver to my expectation. If you have a huge show like Revolution, you want to come out as hot as you possibly can. You want to put your best foot forward, and I did not feel like they actually did that. As we wrap up the show, it does look like the ratings have come in for both NXT and AEW, so just a quick recap of that. NXT did 698,000 with a 0.15 demo last week. They went up 34,000 viewers. The demo was exactly the same this week for NXT Roadblock. Actually surprised, honestly, that it wasn't higher. Thought they were going to hit in the 8s for this, maybe even a little higher than that, just given how loaded the show was. They had the TNA talent. The Hardy Boys were on there. So I would actually call that slightly disappointing, despite the fact that it was up nearly 40,000 viewers. But again, they're consistently in that 700 range now. They've hit 800 multiple times since the beginning of 2025. So they're perfectly fine. In terms of AEW Dynamite, last week it did 600,000 flat with a 0.13 demo. This week, 628,000 with a 0.16 demo. So that's their highest show rating since January 22nd in terms of viewership. Huge positive. Demo right in line with what it has been recently. So coming up, 28,000 viewers. Again, similar increase to what NXT got. Neither of them anything that remarkable to crow about, especially compared to what you would hope for a big show like NXT Roadblock or a big episode of Dynamite without major sports competition, both of them. But Dynamite coming out of a huge pay-per-view that was highly acclaimed. So slightly disappointing ratings for both shows, but that's what they are. And all we're here to tell you is how the shows are doing. That wraps up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. On the way out, allow me to remind you that this show
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Full audio of every episode, video clips from past interviews, full video of brand new interviews in 2025, an hour-long conversation with Vic Joseph, waiting for your ear holes and your eye holes, if you so choose. Don't forget to follow us on social media, at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky, for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can also send in questions and comments for the show. We will do our best to include them in the program. And lastly,
I happen to love the number 5.
Sure hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to the 4 major shows right after they end, and exclusive news analysis every week. That is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We will be back on Monday or Tuesday with our next WWE episode, because Raw is going to be airing at 3 p.m. Eastern in the United States. I had a conversation with vintage Chris Vanini. Depending when both of us finish the show on Monday, if time allows, we may get our WWE episode out, approximately 12 hours earlier than we normally do, maybe even 18 hours earlier than we normally do. So a little bit of a TBD on that, but follow us on social media and you will find out when the episode is live. But again, we'll be back Monday night or Tuesday with our WWE episode. And then right here, same bat time, same bat channel on Thursday, talking NXT and AEW. This is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.